Uh, Good afternoon. My name is Kelly O'Brien. I'm the Executive Director of the Chicago Central Area Committee, and we are thrilled to start today's program, the third in a series, Creating a New Future for Chicago Central City, sponsored by the Burnham Council, a tier of the Chicago Central Area Committee, CCAC. We have the Burnham Council President with us, Andrew Broderick, and I'm going to ask him to give a few comments about what this series is about and why they decided to organize it. I also just want to let you know that this is just the beginning. And if you missed Tuesday when we focused on the economy, or yesterday when we focused on the Central City as a destination, we will be posting those recordings on the CCAC website. So we should have those up by early next week. And for today's purposes, as I mentioned, let me try to get this slide changed. There we go. The agenda for today's meeting is I'm going to introduce Andrew Broderick, who is a senior associate at Perkins & Will, to talk a little bit about the Burnham Council and the purpose of this programming. I'm then going to hand it off to Chris Hall, who is an urban strategy leader at SOM. Chris was instrumental in leading a central city strategy for all of Chicago white paper that CCAC published last year in 2019. And then I will have the honor of introducing our distinct panelists. We will invite you, the audience, to use the Q&A button. If you have any questions that you would like to ask our speakers, I will relay those to them. And we'll wrap up by talking about next steps. And so, as I mentioned, we did publish a Central City Strategy for all of Chicago white paper in the spring of 2019. We kicked off activities in December of 2018, similar to what we're doing now, getting thought leaders to answer questions and provide insights that we can build on. In 2019, the white paper focused on 3 areas: catalytic economic initiatives, new mobility, and digital connectivity for all. As a result of that white paper, CCAC was invited to partner with World Business Chicago, and we embarked on what we called the Corridor Revitalization Initiative. All of this information, again, is on the CCAC website under Our Work. For the Corridor Revitalization Initiative, we worked in 5 neighborhoods where neighborhood leaders selected 2 blocks, and the CCAC teams went parcel by parcel, problem solving and visioning what could be done to make those 2 blocks up to its highest and best use as a trigger for the next 2 blocks and the next 2 blocks. When we finished phase 1 of that effort, we were really honored when the Chicago Department of Planning and Development Commissioner Maurice Cox attended a CCAC executive board meeting and asked if we would work hand in hand with the talented team at DPD, helping to draft the RFPs and provide renderings for the development projects that were being proposed for the neighborhoods within Invest Southwest. Now, as we continue to work with DPD and we continue to build the expertise that we have in the neighborhoods, we are adding to our focus area the return of downtown. And so with that, let me ask Andrew Broderick to join us. And Andrew, can you talk a little bit about what the Burnham Council is as the president and why the council decided to embark on this programming?
Great, Kelly. Thank you, and good afternoon. Yeah, the Burnham Council, which is CCAC's next generation leadership team. There are 8 of us on the leadership team for this. And we started having conversations in the middle of summer about refocusing some of our efforts on the Central City strategy, understanding that 2020 has been an inflection point. And while we're always interested in the continuity and connectivity between the neighborhood and the central area, we felt like we could organize some thought conversations, these panel discussions, and more programming into 2021, focused on talking about issues and potential solutions to some of the most challenging problems our central area faces. And while I think everyone can appreciate a good trilogy, whether it's in arts, literature, or film, this trilogy of panel discussions, today's of which is the 3rd installment, is really the departure point, or the beginning, as Kelly mentioned, to look at the central city for all and update it, so to speak, understanding the changes that we've seen in 2020. And look for more from the Burnham Council into 2021 as we continue to align our networking, our programming, in alignment on this subject matter, and in conjunction with CCAC and the board's direction. So thank you.
Well, Andrew, thank you for all you do. You know, CCAC is very privileged to have Perkins and Will as a strong member. As you know, Gina Byrne is on the executive committee for CCAC, and you're the president of the Burnham Council. So it's very strong contributions to our work, and it's a pleasure working with you. And I really am thankful for all you do. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And then I'd like to turn it over to Chris Hall, again with SOM. Similar to Perkins and Will, SOM has a seat on the CCAC Executive Committee and has one of its young leaders on the Burnham Council. David Scully spoke on our panel on Monday. Chris, how are you today?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you. So happy that we're at day 3.
Great, thanks. So what we wanted to do before we start the panel conversation was really talk a little about the impetus for this initiative and focus, and really thinking about this in terms of this is a really important moment for the city as a whole and its central city, and thinking about how we come back in a way that's really competitive against other central cities around the country, and we are in a competition, and thinking also about how, as we grow in the future, we can ensure a stronger relationship, a more equitable relationship between what happens in the central city and what happens in the neighborhoods. And it's a more reciprocal relationship over time. We're really struck by the fact that coming back from the Great Recession, Chicago was a little slower out of the blocks than other cities. And there are lots of reasons for that. It's about the sectors we had. But we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to come back stronger this time. And the really key period for this is 2021 to 2024. Those are the times when we really set the trajectory going forward. So that's kind of the impetus for this. What I'm going to do now is just take a step back, actually, for to 2019, as the paper we put together, we had kind of a snapshot of where we were at that point in terms of the central city. But then also we wanted to just highlight some key messages and conclusions that are starting to come out of research from CBRE, ULI, and others about where we may be going in terms of the key sectors. So Kelly, do you want to advance? So just really quickly in kind of headlines, 2019, it felt like we were in a boom at the building level and kind of the mega project level, significant investment coming into Chicago, and that resulting in transformation of our streets and places and skyline. So next. And that was really driven by really strong growth in terms of jobs growing in the central area, the greater central area. And it's not just the Loop anymore. I think we all know that this functional area, this functional economic area is extending in every direction, except for into the lake. Next. And we were tapping into a national and really an international pattern as well of businesses growing in central cities and reducing their footprints in suburbs. And Chicago saw some very clear direct relocations, but it also benefited from that underlying pattern. And Chicago benefited as a destination for corporate investment and relocations in that period. Next. But we had some challenges. The rate of population growth was slower than it was elsewhere in other major metro areas. And that kind of speaks to some wider issues for the whole region, but also kind of city issues. So we want to keep an eye on that. Next. And of course, within the city itself, we had uneven growth. So the central city was seeing significant population growth, while other neighborhoods were actually seeing population loss. So it was the central city that was kind of keeping up the changes that were happening there, which were keeping up the overall level of population. Next. We go to the next slide.
Sorry. clicking it. Let me see what there you go. Sorry.
Okay, and then equity was a major consideration in 2019, and I think we've all seen the way that consideration has become heightened and focused. But it was certainly on the table in 2019 and drove a lot of our thinking about the relationship between the central city and neighborhoods. Next. So where are we now? This is a graph that could describe any number of data sets over the last year and looking forward. But this is the GDP, it's the United States GDP, and forecast for how growth may return and when it may return. And essentially looking to level set maybe later next year, towards the end of 2021. And that actually means we've lost about 18 months to 2 years worth of growth, which has a lagging impact. So go next. And you can see how this translates into unemployment forecast, with unemployment coming down quite rapidly, but not getting back to 2019 levels for the next couple of years. Next. And thinking about kind of the major sectors that sort of make up our central city in terms of office, what are people starting to say about office and workplace? And the conclusion seems to be we're in for a shift, but it's not the end. And lots of debate about how offices will play out and when people will be able to come back to work. But the key conclusion is that offices will remain the dominant location for white-collar employment, and that component of employment will continue to grow. But there will be more flexibility in how people actually use offices. Next. And retail, we're really seeing like a great transition. This culmination of trends that have been happening for years, but really brought to the fore by what's happening right now. And at the top one end of the scale, we're seeing flagship stores close. I think Gap announced they're leaving Michigan Avenue. And then at the other end, I think this is really important for this conversation around livability, is the impact on kind of smaller businesses and local businesses, which have really been hit during this recession by the shutdown, essentially, because they may be smaller, they may have lower cash reserves. So we've got a real question about how do we rebuild the retail amenity that makes the central city a really livable place. Next. And then hotel, a key part of our economy, but also a resource for residents as well, in the sense of we use the bars, we use the restaurants, we have our meetings there as well. Our guests come from out of town. So the forecasts are that hotel occupancy comes back by 2023. So a little bit of a longer tail, but a lot of the conversation yesterday was that leisure travel will come sooner, and then business and commercial travel will come back. And residential, which is the focus today, a real sense that home has become more important, and the amenities we have both in our homes, in our buildings, in our immediate neighborhoods are really critical going forward. And then also that we're looking at a major kind of generational shift, in the sense that the millennials are reaching their family formation years, which some people think will lead them to move to the suburbs. But raises the question for us of, can we make the central city more livable for families, in addition to the kind of cohorts and demographics that have driven growth in the past? And also looking to the next generation. Generation Z will be coming up, and we're expecting them to come into the cities and live in the central cities, but they may have some different expectations. And they're also a smaller cohort than the millennials were. So next. And of course, continued affordability challenges. A lot of the residential units that have been created have not kept up with or reflected the distribution of household incomes. And that's a countrywide issue, but it affects Chicago too. Next. And equity, as we all know, that's a key consideration. It was for us in putting the paper together a couple of years ago, and it remains so. And I think this report from the mayor's office, the Recovery Task Force report, kind of nailed it, that what we need to do is look at a new economic model based on inclusive growth that takes a holistic approach to development across both downtown and our neighborhoods. So that's kind of our watchword going forward. So next. So lots of dynamics to think about across all kinds of sectors, which we need to kind of address in order to be successful over the next couple of years. Next. And thinking about, it's a question of recovery, it's about competitiveness, it's about growth, and we want to grow our population, which is very closely linked to growing our jobs, and we need to keep equity on the table. Next. And then we had this idea that there's a framework for how we come back. There's the near-term activation, which is really about the immediate process of bringing people back, maybe post-vaccine, and then the restoration. How do we maximize recovery up to 2024? And then how do we think about these long-term urban trends that we need to incorporate in planning for the future? Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate all the work that you did in last year, and then putting this deck together and helping to share this information over the course of the last 3 days. And I am looking forward to our discussion. We have 4 panelists today. Our first, just not in any particular order, but we did send information in regards to their bios, and in the email that went out first thing this morning, as well as in the 10-minute reminder that we sent you. So I'm just going to list their titles, and if you want more information, please use those resources. But we have Ali Galan with us, Senior Reporter, Commercial Real Estate, Cranes Business. Bonnie Sanchez, who is the President, Executive Director of the Near South Planning Board. Malik Abdulsamad, and he is on the Burnham Council and a real estate consultant with Compass. And Deputy Chief O'Shea he's a Deputy Chief in Area 3, Office of Operations, Chicago Police Department. So welcome. Thank you for taking your time to be with us today. I know our audience is really interested in listening to your perspectives. And Bonnie, I'd like to start with you. Maybe you can just briefly help everyone understand, what does the Near South Planning Board do? Maybe talk a little bit about your businesses and kind of the state of things where we are right now.
Thank you, Kelly. And I'm pleased to be here in front of the audience out there and this distinguished panel. I represent an organization called the Near South Planning Board, and we focus on revitalization efforts on building the Near South Side from south of the Loop all the way to 35th Street, from the lake over to the river. And throughout the years, we have been challenged to increase economic development in the Near South Side. And through that, we work not only with new development that's happening in the area, serving the much needed community efforts of reviewing plans, projects, proposals, and providing our input in the development of these proposals and projects. But we also work with the business community in order to ensure thriving business districts in the Near South Side. So being the South Loop, so close to the Loop, and trying to, we're all about connectivity. How do we continue the growth of the downtown area as it travels further south? And so as the executive director for many decades, I'm not going to say how long, but I've been with the organization for many years, and that's basically what we do.
And so, Bonnie, in terms of businesses that are in the South Loop, small and independent business owners, what are you hearing in terms of what they are going to need to recover and grow?
Well, obviously, the consumer base is very necessary. Our businesses are struggling absolutely now, right during the current conditions. But in order for us to get past this, we're all looking at what would be safety and being secure in our daily lives is the number one issue that we hear anywhere, and in particular in the South Loop with all of the activities that have happened, the civil unrest and all of that. And so how are we able to bring back the vibrancy that we had seen pre-COVID? And we were having businesses opening in restaurants, our hospitality industry was booming. And it's sad right now if you walk around, but we know that bringing back the tourism, bringing back the office occupancy, all of that, the culture, all of that is what we're going to need, the strong support. And we're a very optimistic group that we know that once we're able to, I can just see everybody lining the streets and, saying, hey, we've missed you and let's grab a coffee, and, all of that will happen. And I'm truly optimistic about that. And so I think that's what we need to make sure that we have that safe and secure feeling when we're going back to our business and back into the businesses, back into our restaurants and hotels. And our businesses are working through that, whether it's filtration, ventilation, all of that. They're taking those steps right now to ensure that this is a safe place to come. Even now during COVID, I've walked through many businesses and seeing how they're preparing and, are ready to accept customers in there.
Thank you, Bonnie. And so with Bonnie focused on the South Loop, let's take it up a notch. And I'd like to ask Albie, if you would like unmute yourself, thank you. And then maybe you can share with us your perspective, really covering the whole city and what you're seeing and projecting in terms of, from a real estate standpoint.
Well, in the context of residential, I've been writing a lot about the apartment market and what's been going on there. Obviously, it's interesting because there's a real kind of divergence between downtown Chicago, high-rise buildings in downtown Chicago, and then what's going on out in the suburbs. Downtown landlords are struggling, and suburban landlords, just like nothing happened. And I think the neighborhood housing market on the north side, places like that, is holding up relatively well, certainly better than downtown. And a lot of it is about density. I mean, being in a high-rise building comes with its hassles in the middle of a pandemic. And I also think you've seen a lot of the reasons to live downtown have kind of disappeared temporarily, right? Because people are working from home. And so a lot of people don't need to be close to their offices. And then, restaurants and bars and all the other fun places you want to go when you live downtown are closed, or, they're closed. And so that's had a real impact on the market. And, I think it all comes down really, Chris, I'm glad you put out those slides about the economy and the job market, because that's really what drives the downtown housing market. And for the last 10 years or so, the apartment market has grabbed an overwhelming share of the housing market in downtown Chicago. That's where all the development has been. And so, jobs need to come back for housing demand to come back. And it's obviously a question of when that's going to happen. But when it does happen, I think you'll see a recovery in the market. But I would say that a big question is, what's going to happen to office employment in downtown Chicago? I think Chris had a slide that said it's going to be down 15%. That was more of a national number. But, if you see office using employment in downtown Chicago down 15%, and that's more of a structural shift, even that is going to have an impact, not just on the housing market, but on restaurants and retailers and so many other businesses in downtown Chicago.
Okay, thank you, Albie. And Malik, maybe you can, as a commercial real estate professional, What have been your experiences in terms of where the market is right now? Do you see things having slowed?
For sure, Kelly. So the market is very, very slow downtown, especially on the retail and office end. But, from my observation in the market, this is really just a short-term effect of COVID. But if you look at all the projects that are thinking 2, 3, 5, or 10 years down the road, all these projects are going full force. You see new, really bold ideas with a lot of capital coming downtown. I don't know if you heard a few days ago, just a proposal to do kind of a stadium for gamers in the South Loop. It's kind of big bulk idea that counts on a lot of people clustering in a small room to sit and watch people play. So when you look at it from a long-term perspective, there's still a lot of confidence in downtown Chicago. There's a lot of desire to be in the downtown, to bring new ideas to downtown. And one more thing I want to say, when even if occupancy in the office goes down, that will create a gap, and that gap will be filled by a new generation of occupants. And that new generation of occupant could be somebody who could not afford to be here before, or was not a good fit here before. But the face of who occupies downtown and who can afford to be downtown is going to change. And I think that gap is going to be filled by a new generation of businesses that will grow and support the long-term growth of downtown occupancy, whether on the retail or the office side.
Thank you, Malik. And Deputy Chief, if you would put yourself off mute, thank you. And help people understand what is Area 3. Let's start with defining the area that you oversee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. So Area 3 consisted of 6 police districts, including the 1 and the 18th district, which are our central business district. We have since realigned that for those 2 districts to be under 1 deputy chief, and that's under Deputy Chief Mike Piggott. And the boundaries, just so you know, kind of give you a geographical area. The 1st district goes from the river all the way up to 31st Street on the south end, from the lake all the way over to roughly the Kennedy Expressway. And then the 18th district goes from the river on the south end all the way up to Fullerton, from Lake Michigan all the way over to the river, including Goose Island. So about 200,000 in population. I think that's a little low. With all the apartment buildings and high rises going up over the last several years, I think that's a little low. And it doesn't take into consideration the daytime population of the workers, the tourists, and everyone coming down there to enjoy our beautiful downtown. So it's about 9.4 square miles of the central business district and the near north side. And I also have the 12th district, the 19th district, the 20 and the 24th district. So that goes straight up the lakefront all the way to Rogers Park, and then over west to as far as Kedzie in some areas, including the United Center. So that's kind of Area 3, but then the Central Control Group, which was just realigned, is now under Deputy Chief Piggott, and that's strictly downtown, and that was done in mid-August.
Well, thank you. Thank you for helping us understand that. And, during the course of our conversation on Monday and Tuesday, safety was brought up. I mean, there were problems before, 2020 hit, and in large measure, some feel that the problems, we've had the previous problems and then maybe new problems. So one question I have is, what is the Chicago Department of Police doing to address the safety issues so that people feel safe when they're downtown?
So just a brief kind of overview of what downtown used to be as far as the police department. It used to be, kind of the retirement home for officers. They used to do 20 years, 25 years somewhere else, and then, do their last 3 or 4 downtown with the nice restaurants and all the tourists and stuff. So that kind of bit us in the butt, if you will, long term. When I was previously the commander of the 18th district, so we wanted to bring a lot more younger officers downtown to really have them take hold and have some ownership in downtown. And when the older guys retired, it was all based on seniority. So, they didn't really replace a lot of the officers downtown. So we were running on bare bones. But the good news is that the new superintendent has promised to increase our manpower down there on a permanent basis. Right now, you see a lot of the officers down there with their blue lights and stuff. And that was an immediate increase in police presence down there. But there is a long-term strategy to increase the manpower. Those that work down there will take an ownership and have a better relationship with the residents and the businesses in the downtown area. So that should be coming up over the next couple of months.
And so, there is sometimes a disconnect between perception and reality. So from a reality standpoint, what have the statistics shown in terms of crime? Is it up, down, the same as, let's say, this time last year?
So we base our stats on index crimes, which are kind of all the major ones: murder, criminal sexual assault, robbery, aggravated battery, burglary, theft, and motor vehicle theft. And the statistics are kind of deceiving, right? We don't have a lot of people on the streets. So overall, a lot of the property crimes are down. However, violent crime is up, which is, what everyone's concerned about, especially the carjackings. And I could talk about that in a little bit. But for overall, for the first district, which is south of the river, crime is down 19%. That's just the index crimes, but there are some upticks. Just for example, we've had 6 murders in the first district this year compared to 3 last year. So on the 18th district side, we've had actually 10 murders compared to 4 murders last year at this time. So the numbers are kind of deceiving. Perception is reality for a lot of people. We really want to create a safe environment down there, and that takes everybody kind of working together. And we're recommending a lot of things, a lot of infrastructure changes, a lot of changes, the way people do business down there, residences to be more active within the police department. So we have a lot of good things, proposals that we're putting forward to the superintendent, and hopefully those will take effect soon.
Thank you. We're going to dive more into that, but I want to turn back to Bonnie for a moment. And, it was music to my ears, to hear your enthusiasm about how you think that these businesses, when we're kind of post-vaccine, that the businesses will be vibrant again. But my question is, what are you hearing from the business owners in order to really survive between now and, let's say, this time next year, when it's projected that we will have, enough herd immunity with the vaccinations?
Well, right now we spend a lot of our time trying to help economically with funding. What kind of funding is out there to help them to get to survival, right? There are many that are going to close, and there are some that are going to take a hiatus until, whether it's the second quarter or the first quarter, just to be able to survive. So so we see that, and don't get me wrong, there are some businesses that are just opening during the pandemic as well, and they're looking at different things, whether they have space in front of their building. So using the restaurants, for example, so that they can have these sidewalk cafes, or the types of buildings they're going in, large windows, just thinking ahead of how to prepare themselves so to survive this survival mode. Because I heard earlier today that the thought is that 50% of occupancy will go back by July, and so now they have to survive the first and second quarter of this. And so being able to have that support from government to help them succeed, and being prepared moving forward is what they are looking at right now. And, everybody's trying these shop local. It's great that the community comes together. Everybody in the community, the residents, they're all doing their darndest to help survive, and coming up with different initiatives to support these businesses. And it's great when you have the community rally around. But if we don't get more help from the government, and we need to open up, it's how can we do that safely?
And, I just saw a news clip that was focused on Oak Park, and they did a big campaign with their residents to support local businesses, asking each resident to, spend $25 in a local, whether it was a coffee shop or it was, takeout dinners. But the business community came together and said, if half of the residents would spend $25 a week on food supporting local restaurants, that they will survive. So I think those are, that's a strategy for now. But a lot of the work that the CCAC is looking at is that middle range. So this time next year, really through 2024, 2025. So, Malik, let me ask you, as somebody who lives downtown and is in the commercial real estate space, what businesses do you think we don't have and need, or businesses that should expand in terms of, from a livability standpoint? What do we need, and how can we get the positioning now so that we're ready for that this time next year, let's say?
For sure. So I would say we have all the services we need, but a lot of the businesses downtown are really oriented towards visitors, not towards residents, not towards people who live in the neighborhood. So I think, more smaller businesses that cater to the neighborhood, to, neighbors basically, rather than those who cater to visitors, is something that we definitely need. And I think that it will come, And just a quick comment I wanted to make about, the businesses that or like the retail that went out of business. There's no doubt that COVID is the worst thing that happened to retail in many, many years. But there's also no doubt that many of these businesses were on their way out anyway. This just accelerated, pushing them out of the market. It's very unfortunate, but it was coming sooner or later. And they will be replaced with, newer businesses that are more focused on, the consumer rather on sales, and are more focused on the neighborhood rather on, just putting big box stores that cater to tourists and visitors.
Thank you, Malik. And Albie, what about, from your perspective, what types of housing will be needed in the Central City in the future?
Well, that's a hard question to answer because, obviously, land costs are so high in the city, and that creates an incentive for developers to build more expensive housing, right? And I think to a degree that's going to continue after we get past this. But there has been. Well, I think I think everyone would agree that we need more kind of mid-priced or affordable housing in downtown Chicago and kind of the outlying areas. And as a reporter, I'm just going to be watching to see what kind of policies come out of City Hall to encourage that. And right now, there's the city has an affordable housing. It's an inclusionary housing policy called the Affordable Requirements Ordinance. And it's complicated, but it requires developers to include, if they want to get some kind of zoning change or any kind of like public benefit for their project, they need to agree to provide a certain amount of affordable housing in their buildings. And so I think the city under Lori Lightfoot is in the process of, there's a task force that's looking at revisions to this. And I think we're going to see something coming out in the next few months that will kind of put more teeth into the current ordinance and require developers to put more affordable housing on site in new projects. So, that's one piece of the puzzle, I think. There have been, I think there has been a long time push to get more housing for families. A lot of the development in downtown Chicago has been like studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and things like that. And I think this goes all the way back to the Daley administration. I remember, I think Mayor Daley used to lean on developers saying, we need more 3-bedroom units in this building. And so I think that's definitely a need. But you also, that comes with other issues that you have to address too, which is, if you want more families to stay in the city, you have to do something about schools. You have to give them a good education option. So there's that. And then there's also been a fair amount of experimentation that's been going on in housing in terms of things like co-living and micro units, which, make housing kind of more affordable for people. And that's not going to change the market in a huge way, but it's on the margins, and I would expect that to continue probably into the future.
Thank you. Yes, and I would echo that. I know from the work that CCAC is doing with the RFPs, for example, for potential housing projects in the Invest Southwest arena, we have been looking at larger units, and so I think that that's very much in line with the current thought process. And so, Deputy Chief, let me come back to you. And again, these are difficult conversations. I think back to Memorial Day weekend, and watching in horror, what was happening downtown with the riots and the looting. But Chicago was not, alone. There were cities from coast to coast that were experiencing this social unrest. But Chicago stands out, yesterday having somebody with a rifle at Metra and, at the McCormick Place stop, and really having a reputation, with gun violence. And so, again, I know that there's a lot of changes that you say are happening, but why has it taken so long for these changes, to be thought of and implemented?
Well, there's a lot of factors. COVID is a big factor. What's going on in the courts is a big factor. We're just one cog in the criminal justice system. I think what's going on in the court system is really having an impact, and they're hampered by COVID too, in the Cook County Jail. So it really affects, the whole criminal justice system, not just us. We're approaching a record number of guns recovered by the Chicago Police Department by the end of the year, and just in the 1st District. And the 18th district, I'll give you the numbers. For gun arrests in the 18th district, there's 179 compared to 46. That's a 289% increase. And then in the 1st district, I'm sorry, that was the 1st district. In the 18th district, we have 157 compared to 66, and that's a 138% increase. In the years past, when we made gun arrests, they would stay in jail until their trial. They were a danger to the community. Now with the COVID and electronic monitoring and the revamping or the reimagining of the bail system, it's causing a real problem for us out on the street. The officers are out there doing their job. We're hampered too by COVID. We're not we don't have as many interactions with the public as we do, but that will come back as well. The officers. We've had 4 or 5 officers die of COVID. And then it does weigh on your mind if you're getting out of the car to approach someone. This is not just something that can kill us; it can kill our family. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things, a lot of factors in why it's taken so long. But we're putting together a comprehensive crime strategy for downtown. We're pushing all of our gun arrests to the federal level. We want to see some federal time for that. To send that message that if you carry a gun downtown, the feds are going to take your case. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. But we've had great success with a lot of those guys with the right background, going federal. It really does send a message, to guys going down there to commit crimes. We've dealt with the protests, like you said, probably better than any other city. We've had our issues. The first weekend was horrible. We've probably done, 100 or so protests since then with minimal arrests. There was only a couple of, these agitators get inside these legitimate protests and throw bottles and stuff at the police to spark up a reaction. So it's been very difficult, all summer long trying to keep that in check. But we fared better if you look at Oregon, Seattle, even New York. New York was dealing with a lot of unrest. I think we fared a lot better. We've handled, I've handled 20, 30,000 people at Union Park, and as long as it's handled properly and the agitators are dealt with within those crowds, you can have a legitimate First Amendment protest. So, it's been a challenging year for the police department. We've seen, a lot of retirements, and COVID, hitting us right out of the box there in March. We've really had to kind of reassess and reorganize. We had just reorganized in February. We went from 3 areas of responsibility to 5, which gave us a better coverage as far as our detectives. And then again, when the superintendent reorganized in July, August, we had to reorganize again and add in the central control group. So, I agree with everyone. It will come back downtown. We need more police down there, and we're going to get that. And it'll show. It takes time, but it will show. The courts and the Prisoner Review Board and the Illinois Department of Corrections, I think they need to be held accountable just as much as we're held accountable. We're always up there answering questions, but the other 4 or 5 parts of the criminal justice system need to be up there as well and answering questions.
Working together.
Correct. We can't do it alone.
Right.
We have to, they're our partners, and I'm not, throwing them under the bus. They are our partners. So we all need to talk to each other and figure this out.
Great. And Albie, the deputy chief brought up that Chicago is doing better than, some other cities. What are you seeing in terms of, if you're going to compare Chicago's livability and other cities?
Well, it's certainly a cheaper place to live than, say, New York or San Francisco or some other cities. So, the cost of living, I think, is a competitive advantage for Chicago, and it has been for some time. And what's interesting to me is that with this work from home trend that we're seeing in COVID, which, I don't think it's permanent, but I think that on the margin, you're going to have companies, probably some tech companies, that will have more of their workforce spread out. So I think it's going to be easier for, say, a big tech company in the Bay Area to say, we want to have a larger office in Chicago. And that would be a good thing for Chicago. Chicago's the capital of the Midwest. And if you're a STEM kid and you go to U of I or Purdue or some other Big Ten school, you're more inclined to move to Chicago than to go to, Mountain View or, somewhere out in the Bay Area where the cost of living is really high. Mm-hmm. I'm generalizing here. Obviously, there are plenty of people who want to go out there. But I think that, I would hope, as somebody who lives here, that would help us in terms of attracting jobs to Chicago. You look at companies like Salesforce, which is anchoring a big office tower on Wolf Point. They're going to be hiring a lot of people there, presumably. And so, so that's obviously a different issue. It's related to jobs and economic development, but it all flows back to residential. And so if we can get that going, I think that'll be a good thing for the Chicago residential market.
And as you noted earlier, the residential market depends on the jobs. So then I'm going to turn to Malik, and I'm going to ask, I know you spend time in a number of cities, including New York and Chicago. And so what do you think, if we're looking kind of post-vaccine, mm-hmm. what kind of businesses would be interested in coming to Chicago? How do we make Chicago an attractive place for businesses to want to locate?
Well, I want to say typically all these big businesses, they start with the bigger cities, New York, San Francisco, and then they come to Chicago. So one of the ways we should go out and get these companies to come here is to show them that we do have the density and connectivity that they do get in New York, for example. In my opinion, the only thing that New York does better than Chicago is being a lot denser and a lot better connected. Wherever you go in the city, you're very well connected, and density allows a much more vibrant base of businesses throughout the city. Almost, I would say equally, but almost equally distributed throughout the city. So what we need to do is to go out to these cities where there are the source of these bigger businesses and show them that we do have the density, the connectivity that they need to relocate to Chicago, and that we are a ton more affordable, so they can do basically their business on steroids in Chicago, things that they cannot afford to do in Manhattan, for example, today.
Excellent. And so, Bonnie, in terms of that connectivity, how do you feel as somebody who leads a business group in the South Loop? Do you feel like the South Loop is as connected as it can and should be to the core?
Well, I'll tell you, it's been a long process. And just when we started seeing this wonderful growth in the near south side. COVID hit. You know, we talked about the different types of housing, right? And this pre-COVID cycle was this co-living. Every project that seemed to be coming up were looking at these micro units or co-living, and so that they can bring in more of the younger population. You know, I spend many time trying to figure out what is it that the younger generation wants, and why are they moving downtown or close to downtown. And obviously it's the nightlife, right? And things to do downtown, and having wonderful views of the lake. You know, we have the lake and the cultural institutions that are big reasons why people move downtown. And the other comment about businesses, yeah, some businesses were going to close down, but there are others that weren't. And they were truly affected by COVID. And so, you know, so what I see is that being connected and bringing in more, you know, what was missing for many years was the daytime critical mass. And so having the residents at home, working at home, you know, visiting, carry outs or whatnot is great. But as you move forward, we're still lacking that daytime critical mass where you had the large offices that had all of the employees that go out at lunchtime or, you know, or whatnot. That is still missing prior to COVID, and that will be needed as we move forward in that. And right now, working with small businesses that are catering to the restaurant is what the focus has been on. Catering to the residents, I should say, is what our focus has been on lately. And just to give a little plug, you talked about the esports complex that's coming in the near south side too. So those types of projects are still happening. We're going to see the tech companies. We're going to see the medical field. People are that dealing with the medicine, the medical office, and all that. So to give a plug on that, the Near South Planning Board will be presenting the esports complex next Thursday at our noon program.
Well, that's excellent. That's very exciting. Congratulations on that, Bonnie. And again, I do invite the audience to use the Q&A button if there are any questions that you would like to ask our panelists. And there is one question that I think maybe Albie will start with you, and if anybody else has thoughts, please jump in. But the question reads, what do you see as the role for better transit, including better buses with dedicated lanes?
Oh boy, can't you ask somebody else that question?
Does anybody else want to take it?
I don't really have a good answer to that question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, I know being for you know, many decades trying to get better transportation within the near south side has been a focus point. You know, we had, as we see the Roosevelt hub there was nothing then to 35th Street. And so along State Cermak, being able to get that green line in there. But we've talked about the circulator, and it's, you know, it's, ooh, I'm with you, Albie. It's kind of hard to figure that one out.
You know, one thing I will say though about transit that it's going to be an issue with some of these big mega developments that are in the works, like the 78 and like Lincoln Yards and like the Burnham Lakefront, if that's what it's called on the Michael Reese site. You know, being able to get people, you know, in and out of those sites is going to be really important. And so that will be key to the development of those sites. Now, I don't know if you consider that part of the central city, central area. I don't think you do, but you know, that's where the action is going to be in real estate for the next 10, 20 years on those sites.
Right, and to follow up with that, I mean, One Central as well, the proposal is to connect, whether it's Union Station with the museum campus, and, you know, all of those are looking, and I know that the Michael Reese, I forgot, Lakefront Burnham, whatever that they're calling that, you know, they're talking too, how do you get the transportation flow in there, and the new stops, you know, and 78, you know, with the metro stop, and yeah, all of those are being in discussion in these projects that will connect Chinatown. Let's not forget about Chinatown, and connect through the central city into, you know, beyond the near south side.
Yep.
And I would add just one more thing about, you know, there should be more focus on alternative modes of transportation that work within the central area. You know, like, you know, bikes, e-bikes, more bike lanes, you know, the e-scooters that are out there. These are really important to expand today. And I think they will help so much with connectivity because, you know, as we know, and CCAC worked on that project, connecting from the central area to the city is one subject. It's another thing to connect within the central area. And it's not always as easy and smooth to do it. And, you know, focusing on bikes and scooters and e-bikes would be a great way to solve that problem.
Malik, thank you for bringing up that, you know, the new mobility. And I do invite the audience to look at the CCAC website. We have the connector proposal, which in the 1990s was referred to as the circulator. And then in the Central City Strategy for All of Chicago white paper, we look at mobility and we look at it from, you know, internally within the central city, you know, to the neighborhoods and neighborhood to neighborhood. So we've really given a lot of thought, and we do think that there's a lot of opportunity that can make transit easier. And really, we need to be at the forefront of adopting the new technologies. That is critical that we get the systems in place and that we lead the country in terms of the ability to move people and goods more seamlessly. So we do have another question for the Deputy Chief that I'd like to read, and it is: the vaccines may solve the public health issue over the next year. It is a perceived safety issue downtown that will linger for the central area. Are the police aware that they have a role in the economic recovery of the central area by solving or managing the fear of crime?
Absolutely. You know, we know that our pension relies on downtown. So everyone has a role to play on the police department in making sure that downtown remains vital and strong. You know, we put in the infrastructure program with our city partners to protect all of our retail corridors and kind of set up that perimeter in cases of civil unrest or mass looting. So no, we're well aware of it, and perception is everything down there. We have a lot of, you know, good things on the plate, including, you know, pushing our gun arrest to the federal level. We are now getting a bond court presence. Usually in the past, when we arrested someone, the officers were not in bond court, or a representative from the police department was not in bond court. We know who the problem is in our community. And you know, having that judge take that extra step to listen to the officer who may know this individual in bond court may help set a higher bond. So we are working on it. We are well aware of how important downtown is, not just the businesses, but the residents who live down there. And, you know, we do have a court advocacy program, which we get a lot of residents that show up when one of their neighbors is the victim of a crime. They show up in court, and believe me, when the judge sees that presence in court, he really does take into consideration, you know, any rulings that he may make regarding that individual. Again, restricted with COVID, court presence and all that. So once we come out of this, we're going to come out strong out of the gate and really take our city back.
Excellent. That's excellent news. And, you know, for those that are watching and are considering maybe coming into the city to look at the holiday windows or the holiday tree, any advice for what people should or shouldn't do to keep themselves safe?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, be aware of your surroundings. There's plenty of police down there, and that's going to continue till the end of the year and beyond, from my understanding, as far as, you know, all the guys with the blue lights on. They're not just scarecrows. They do take action. which is why you see an increase in gun arrests in both the central business district and the near north neighborhood. So just be aware you're present, be aware of your surroundings, come down, enjoy the restaurants, the sites. And if there is, if a large crowd does come around, we had a large crowd of kids come down the other night. It would probably be best to leave. But once we get enough manpower down there to handle that, it's nothing new down there. We've had the kids come down in the past. They really are just, raucous and rowdy. They do shoplift. Sometimes they go into a store and overwhelm the store and shoplift. But it's not loot. It's not breaking windows and looting. It's kind of just, a big bunch of kids with nothing to do in their neighborhood. And, the neighborhoods are war zones right now. It's no secret that we're at 730 plus murders in the city of Chicago. So we want everyone to come downtown and enjoy it, but they have to be held accountable and they have to go to jail when they start fighting in the street and stuff like that. So be aware of your surroundings. The carjackings, you may want to take an extra spin around the block before you park, see if anyone's following you. One of the tips that we like to give out is sometimes they'll bump you in the rear. Stay in your car. If 3 or 4 individuals get out of the car behind you, it's best to just drive off and drive to the station, the closest police station. And you can report that via 911 when you get there, or, walk into the station or flag down a policeman. But yeah, we're going to increase our presence down there and we're going to really step up our game in the coming months here. So
excellent. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you. Thank you for your service. And so it looks like we're already out of time, but I'll just ask very quickly, since today's topic is livability, and the CCAC really wants to look at what we can be doing now so that we can have a quick and inclusive growth this time next year and that middle range recovery period. So any parting thoughts that anyone would like to make sure that the audience hears today? Albie?
Well, I did want to say one more thing. I actually was talking to a developer, an apartment developer with a national portfolio this morning, and I told him I was going to be on this panel, and I said, "Do you have any thoughts for me?" And he said a few things that were interesting to me. He's both an optimist and a pessimist. He said, Chicago's such a great place to live. We've got, great educational institutions, cultural institutions, all the things that we know. He said, on the other hand, I'm really worried about our fiscal problems at the city and state level. And he's not doing much in Chicago right now. He's going to other markets because I hear this a lot from real estate investors and developers that, Chicago, they're kind of staying away because there's some concerns about what's going to happen with property taxes and with Fritz Kage's office reassessing the city and downtown Chicago next year. There's just a lot of anxiety among landlords about what's going to happen to their property taxes. On the other hand, he made a very good point about climate change and how this is going to be a much bigger issue as we go forward, and how density combating density is going to be important to an important solution to combating climate change. That dense living is more climate friendly than suburban sprawl and people being reliant on cars and all the other things that go along with that. So I'll just leave you with that. I thought that was an interesting point, and I think it has some validity.
Thank you. Thank you. Malik, any parting words?
I would say uncertainty is more terrible than, a bad market for the market. And so just clearing uncertainty is gonna, set us for, going back for recovery and going for 2021 and beyond, and for downtown to go back to being the vibrant, walkable, desirable place to be.
Thank you. Bonnie?
All I'm saying is support our small businesses. I mean, you've done it before, you'll do it later, but now they need you the most. Whether you're just buying these gift cards for Christmas, we started just recently asking our businesses to tell us one gift item you're suggesting people buy at this time. And so that's what they need you now. You know, they need you now so that they're there later for your needs. So please, shop small, shop local.
Thank you. Deputy Chief?
No, thank you for having me. Just keep in mind that Chicago police officers have been shot at this year 74 times, so it is a very dangerous job. And support your local police. We appreciate everyone's support over the past 6 or 7 months. We know it was a rough year, but we're looking forward to the future and taking back our city.
Well, we pray for your safety and all the officers, you know, in Chicago. Andrew, anything you'd like to close with?
No, I just wanted to say this has been a great conclusion to our trilogy here, right? To the 3 panel discussions, and I just want to applaud and thank all of our panelists. And again, this is something that CCAC and the Burnham Council is looking to advance forward into 2021 with more discussions and solutions around really important issues. So
Thank you. And thank you to the audience that, you know, has stayed with us. I know we're running late, but I'll just ask Chris Hall if you want to turn on your camera and any parting words in terms of what to expect for next year.
Well, firstly, just thank you to everybody for contributions today and over the last few days. And I think just watch this space. I think as an organization, we're going to continue to focus on these issues and offer whatever help we can to the city in terms of developing strategies around these key issues.
Thank you, Chris. So thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for the important work that you do and the contributions that you make to make Chicago a city where people want to work and live. And I share the enthusiasm that when we are on the other side of COVID and we're safe to gather again, that Chicago will come back quickly and strongly. And I do invite the audience again to participate in the work that CCAC will be doing in 2021. Watch your emails, watch our website. So with that, thank you, audience, for staying with us, for running late. Thank you, speakers. I wish everybody a very healthy and happy holiday season and have a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.